We try and see if someone else can talk and see.
Is there, could I get a copy from somebody else on Zoom and see if we've got audio in the room? Jennifer, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
I
Okay.
can hear you. Great.
Okay, it sounds like we're working. Mark Garcia, can you give us an update on the Transportation Commission?
As he doesn't have audio or able to see the room, so he must be struggling with stuff on his end.
Okay. Yeah, the video isn't terribly important. It would be just to,
We can see you now, Commissioner.
I can see you, Mark. Not hearing anything. Looks like he's going to his text machine.
But I
Okay.
cannot hear us. So
He might be having issues on his end.
I can hear you now.
Okay, and we hear you. So you're up. You could give us an update, Mark.
Good morning, everybody. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Good morning. Just a quick update. We had a meeting last week at the headquarters in Denver with the TC Commission. We had a good work session on Wednesday afternoon. We talked a lot about PD14. Got the PD14 scorecard, and then also an update on the 2050 plan, and a lot of good discussion amongst transportation commissioners and CDOT staff. It's a good presentation. Julie also gave a Region 5 update to everyone, did an excellent job showing the unique aspects of our region, our mountain passes, our avalanche zones, and all the work that we're doing on a number of projects throughout Region 5. It was excellent presentation. And I think that was the bulk of the meeting. We did have some discussion on some budget amendments and supplemental budgets regarding the Clean Transit Enterprise Fund. And we also talked about the transportation and asset management budget and setting funds for FY 28 and 29. So fairly straightforward meeting, not a whole lot on the agenda. Any questions from anybody?
Any questions for Mark?
What is PD 14?
It's Policy Directive 14.
Uh-huh.
And it is a directive that we update regularly. I'm trying to find a document here that would best explain it. Let me find the link, and I'll put it in the chat for you all to review, if that's all right. That'd probably be better than myself trying to give you an explanation.
Did we get Marissa to
Yeah,
describe?
Marissa's gonna give us a definition.
You're gonna hear all about it and whenever I'm up on the presentation, but it's our policy that guides the statewide plan and the goals and targets that we strive towards when we plan as a state. So you'll hear more about what that looks like when we get to kick off your plan.
Thank you for that. Anything else for Mark or Marissa? If not, we'll move into our presentations from CDOT. First up is Kevin Curry.
Good morning, thank you. Projects that we got going on in the San Luis Valley currently are US 50, 285, that's intersection improvements plus some rural paving work that goes up towards Maysville. That's has begun, it's ongoing right now, and we hope to have that done before the end of the year. Our chain stations, which is continuation of chain station improvements we've been doing over the last several years. That's currently underway on several passes, 160, 17, and 145. We also have our priority culverts project, which has a number of culverts out here in the valley. I believe most of that work is about wrapped up. I think they're about ready to do a final inspection here pretty soon. So we'll be able to finish that project. As I flip through here, US 24 Buena Vista signals and at Baylor and DePaul. That work has begun, and we should be done with that as well this fall. Hopefully we're getting it all done. Our Wolf Creek Fiber project is continuing to its third year. We've had some stumbles on that project, and we're currently negotiating with the contractor to complete the work. So hopefully we'll get that done. State Highway 17 culverts, that started off as an emergency project. Thanks to Joe and Jason, they got some preliminary work done and held it together. And now we have a contractor out there ready to complete the work on those 2 culverts plus 3 others up on 17. The work has just started. Hopefully we can get done before the end of before the snow flies, I hope. 160, 174 Wolf Creek Tunnel drainage. I don't know if you've gone through the tunnel the last couple of years in the wintertime, but we've had an icing problem at the end of the portal. And we decided we were going to do a quick repair on that. There's an under drain system that needs to get fixed. So we're going to have to pull some panels. We did advertise that we got it out in 60 days, which is pretty good for us. And that work is about to start, and we'll get it done before the end of October. Let's see here. US 160 Fort Garland East is their safety mitigation. That's a 3 large animal underpasses with the associated deer fencing and deer guards. That is still in design, but we hope to get that out this fall for construction starting next year. State Highway 112 from Del Norte to 285 is one of our surface treatment jobs that we'll be putting out this fall for construction next year. One note on that job is we're considering closing 112 during the daytime operation during the it's a cold in place recycling process, which involves a very long, large train system. And so we may restrict the highway during the daytime for local traffic only. We haven't finally decided on that, but we're evaluating that. And then finally, US 291 and US 50 roundabout in Salida. That's a safety improvement project with the roundabout, as I said, scheduled for add in 2026. And then maintenance jobs. You want to talk about it? Kenny?
Okay, this is, I got an update on some FY24 projects that have been completed. The first one we have is on State Highway 142. That was a commission approved project that was done last August from mile marker 13.5 to mile marker 15. Another one that was done by maintenance was on State Highway 15. That was a non-commission approved project. That was from 24.5 to 25.5. With our paving projects, because of our cap on our 250,000 commission jobs, it's about we can get about a mile worth of paving. On our chip seals, we're able to get about 3 miles. Another project that was done was on State Highway 17. That was in Conejos County, and that was a non-commission project for about $100,000. And that was from mile marker 36 to 37. And then our big project that we had done on US 160 Levita Pass. This was some extra funding that maintenance received. Each region received $2 million of pavement preservation money. And Section 3 over in Durango got $1 million, and us here in Alamosa got $1 million. And we used almost $700,000 of that to do a chip seal about 10 miles long on State Highway 160 Levita Pass. Because of our cap and our commission projects, we had to do it in 3 phases. So they started the first chip seal in April. Then they finished that up in May, I believe it was, the bottom half. And then they just finished the center section the first part of July of fiscal year 25. So that is some good funding that we receive, and hopefully we can get some more of that. That helps us keep our highways in better shape and prolongs the life of them. The next projects that I'm going to be mentioning are the projects we have scheduled for now in fiscal year 25. Some of these have already been completed. State Highway 370 from mile marker 9 to 10. That's actually going to be completed next week. State Highway 17 from mile marker 15 to 16.5. Joe was able to get that done last week. That was a commission approved project. So that's just as you start going up Cumbres La Manga Pass. The other one they have scheduled for next week is a non-commission approved project in Costilla County. And that'll be from the state line up to mile marker 1. But I think that might be adjusted a little bit. They're trying to get the worst case of that state highway, and that'll be completed next week as well. And then there's a couple of projects that have been completed up in the Chaffee County area. The first one was at State Highway 291. That was a chip seal. That was a commission approved project from mile marker 2.3 to 8.5. The next one we had was in Mineral County. That was a commission approved project, and that was done just outside of the town of Creed. That kind of ties in to the other engineering project that was done last year. So now from Creed going all the way to the end of the Mineral County line is now having a good smooth pavement. With us being able to tie into that made a big improvement. We did a paving or a chip seal on in Saguache County, and that was on State Highway. That should be a paving project. That's not a chip seal. Highway 114 from 43.8 to 45. You might want to make that change.
Yep.
And then also in Saguache County, that was a chip seal, and that was just done outside of Saguache, 115 to mile marker 119.5. That's been completed. Then up in Gunnison County, this is a paving project that is going to be shelved until the spring. Some of the things that we do sometimes in maintenance is we don't get all our chip seal and paving projects done, so we can keep some funding there for the winter. We never know what kind of winter we're going to have, so we want to make sure we have enough money to go through the winter. And then next spring, if we still have funding, then we'll complete those in the spring, and that is one of them. And then the last one we had was another chip seal that was done in Saguache County, and that one is mile marker 94.5 to the 95.5, and then 97.5 to 99.75. And those were also completed this fiscal year too. So there's only about 2 or 3 projects that didn't get done for this fiscal year that we will try to do in the spring.
Thank you, Kenny and Kevin. Go ahead, Mr. Albright.
So this is in regards to the paving project in Mineral County. Personally, I think it would have been better not done. But so I want to know if CDOT has had any internal conversations about the possible compensation of the vehicles that have been affected. There's up to 20. I know 3 that are being totaled. I spoke with the AG office. Their response was to me is more than likely they will deny the claims. And in a past circumstance, I was referred to something similar in the Eisenhower Tunnel. CDOT actually stepped up and did the right thing here. So right now you have several people that don't have vehicles struggling to get kids to school, to get to work. And 6 to 8 weeks isn't going to cut it, even if they do what they say. And in today's world, you can't replace a car with what they're being told at. So I know of at least 20 this happened to, some much worse than others. You know, the first 6 or 7 that hit the tack oil were pretty much destroyed. So
yeah, that was definitely an unfortunate incident that happened. There was a couple decisions that were made that probably weren't the best decisions, and unfortunately that's what it turned out to be. But just like you said, we refer them to risk management takes it from there.
I have brought this to the attention of our executive management in Denver, and as well as our CDOT risk claims person. We are working with our CDOT risk claims person to get them all the information on what happened on our end. So hoping that the claims would not get denied from that perspective. And they were going to be alerting state risk that works out of the AG's office about our version of the story and what happened out there, and that we definitely have ownership in it. But I'll follow up and make sure that that information is getting over to the AG's group. But unfortunately, it's been explained to me due to state statutes, we have to follow the risk process and can't just compensate outside of that process.
Could you explain your version of what happened? I'm not everybody here maybe is familiar with this incident. Could you,
Do you want to
wanted you
take
give a
that, Kenny?
brief explanation of that?
Sure. The tack was sprayed the day prior to the project. There was some issues with the distributors, the piece of equipment that we used to spray the tack oil, that caused it to shoot out the oil heavier than it should have been shot. Of course, when it's heavier, that means it's going to take a little bit longer to cure. And the decision was made to go ahead and just put traffic on it, thinking it was already ready for the traffic. And unfortunately it wasn't. So that caused all the tack oil to get onto the vehicles. They did come out, and what we had to do was we ended up having to scrape the tack oil off before we could shoot or do the paving. One of the other things that went bad too is there's crack seal in the cracks that we crack seal to preserve the pavement. So because the oil was so thick, it actually it heated up the old crack seal material, and that started pulling up as well. So.
Wow. Yeah, it was incredible how hot this stuff was. It was just melting the underside.
But yeah, that was my question. If it was sprayed the day before, the heat was incredible. I mean, it melted tires on motorcycles. It melted mud flaps. It melted brake lines, CV boots.
The tack oil is heated to 160 degrees.
So it was immediate.
Yeah. So
it wasn't the day before, right? They released traffic while it was
Yes.
still hot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, what they do is they shoot the tack oil the day before to help it cure so that when they come in and pave the next day.
Okay.
But the main thing is the oil was shot too heavy.
The day before.
And then traffic was released on it too soon.
Yeah. And I understand the process. I mean, I'm well versed on it at this point. I just would hope that there's something in place, because it's going to be more than just cars at this point. I mean, and just to be blunt, that my wife was one of them. She's missed work. It's quite a thing going on. So I think that maybe having those conversations before, if something gets denied, that would be a good route to take. So
I'll definitely relay that back to our executive management and the state risk offices. Okay.
thank you.
So I'm
And
sorry this happened and all the hardship has occurred out of it for
I know,
sure.
and I appreciate how you've handled it. Don't get me wrong. I'm going to keep pressing until it's.
You have
We
my personal
understand.
apology as well. I mean, this is not something that, it's not something we definitely don't want anything like this to ever happen. But unfortunately, we live in a world where there's mistakes that happen, and it happened, and all we can do now is learn from it and try to move forward.
Well, I understand that fully. I'm a builder by my other trade. And when we make a mistake, we fix it immediately. And so. Steve, you have the contacts you need between Julie and Kenny and whatnot to stay abreast of the situation, I assume? Yes. Okay. Jesse. Or Jesse. Steve was my dad. Sorry. Be thankful you're not dealing with him. Jesse. Okay, anything else for Kevin or Kenny? All right. Next up, we have the Regional Transportation Plan Development. Marissa.
Yeah, so I'll kind of kick it off as the region director, but looking forward to having this conversation with all the TPR members. It's so nice to see so many of you here in person today for sure. The long range transportation planning process is very integral in how CDOT works with all of our locals to figure out what our work plans are for our future projects and moving forward. and definitely integral in strategic funding when we do get other sources of funding outside of our traditional asset funding as well, to figure out what all those priorities are with our locals, so that we're making sure we're leveraging that money as best as possible and trying to get everybody's needs met as much as we can. So with that, I'm going to are you going to take the conversation, Marissa? Marissa's
Team that will.
Marissa and team, I appreciate you guys coming down from headquarters for the conversation with us today. We'll launch into the presentation, and feel free to ask questions as we go along. Definitely meant to be a conversation, not just a one-way presentation.
Absolutely. Thank you, Julie. All right. I think this should all be emailed to you, but if you want to go to the next slide on the screen. So today is really to kick off the plan with you and hear from you what items you think uniquely affect your TPR, and sort of set the stage for how we can help you prepare a plan that addresses those items and looks at what you want your region to look like in terms of transportation out 20 plus years. And then we also, for our 10-year plan, look at sort of some priority projects for your region that would help you achieve that long-term vision. You want to go to the next slide? So today, we'll look at just some changes and trends that we've seen in this area since you last adopted your plan back in, I believe, 2020. We'll look at and kind of start the conversation about if any of your goals or priorities have changed. Look at some data trends, and then hear from you on focus areas as we write the narrative for your 2050 plan. The next slide. So today we're at your TPR meeting number 1, which we're kind of calling your plan overview. I just sort of discussed what we'll go over, but this will help us again set the stage for what we're anticipating as a series of 4 meetings with you, series of 4 guided conversations. At the next meeting, we'll build on this meeting and sort of dial it in further. We talked a little bit about introducing PD 14, so that the Transportation Commission should take action on that by the time of your next meeting. So we will know what the goals and targets are that we need to achieve as a state as we plan out to 2050. And I'll introduce sort of what we're seeing as those theme areas in the next slide. But we'll have a final version of that PD 14 by the time of your next meeting. And then we'll also start reviewing your project list. So when you adopted your plan 4 years ago, you had sort of a list, I think, of roughly 20 top priority projects in your plan document. And then in your appendix, you had what I'll call like a long list of projects. So we'll sort of bring those lists back to you, have you look at them, see if anything's changed. And that will sort of pair with and we can talk about this in later slides too, is we're proposing that if you're interested as a TPR, that there can be a special session on transit and active transportation. We know your time is limited and it's a lot of information that we bring to you at these meetings. So it was requested that when we were developing these plans about 4 to 5 years ago, that maybe a little bit more time could be spent just talking about transit and active transportation if you're interested as a TPR. So we're putting that out there. These can be a virtual session, or we can put it perhaps in timing with your TPR meeting, but we can talk about that in later slides. If you want to go to the next slide. So your 3rd TPR meeting that will be held sort of in the winter of 2025, I believe. That's when we will look at those lists again and sort of make sure we know what your new priority list is, see what's changed, including that active transportation discussion that we might have. We'll bring that information to you, and then you'll be able to review that all in your spring meeting. We'll write a draft plan on your behalf. You'll let us know if we got everything right. And then hopefully set you up for adoption. And these plans are really critical. We develop, we as CDOT help the TPRs in the rural areas of the state write their plans, and then we partner with the metropolitan areas. And all of these plans roll up to inform the statewide plan and help us as CDOT figure out where the priorities are and then help guide our investments. I think I covered all this. If you want to go to the next slide.
Hey, real quick,
Yeah.
Marissa, just wanted to talk about what the schedule might mean specifically to this TPR. So this is meeting 1, this is the overview, right? So meeting 2 will be in October. That would be the meeting when the projects at least need to be identified that we would consider prioritizing in meeting 3. So the current statewide plan has a prioritized list of projects. You want to look at that, make sure that at least if they're in your county and your municipality, those are still priorities for you. There is also a overall long list of projects. So try to be familiar with that list. See if there's projects on there that are still a priority. If they are, keep those moving. If they're not, if there's something else you would rather be considered, that October meeting is when that should be brought forward to the TPR to consider adding to that long list that would then get prioritized in October. And then as far as the transit meeting, since this group only meets quarterly, whereas some of the other TPRs meet every other month, it may be worth considering adding an additional TPR meeting in addition to the quarterly meetings to have that topic discussed. That would probably be my recommendations. I think otherwise there's not going to be time to get to it in the other meetings.
When would you like us to make that decision at this meeting, whether we would like to have an additional transit meeting or not?
It probably wouldn't hurt to make that
Okay.
decision now, and then people can
Okay.
start planning for it. And you may want to fit it like halfway between. Of course, that's going to be January or something like that, when it's hard to get everybody together, at least in person. But yeah, I having talked with enough of the counties and municipalities in the San Luis Valley, I get the sense that transit is a priority and active transportation is something that folks would like to consider. And it might be easier to do that in a separate meeting where that way we're comparing apples to apples, transit projects to transit projects versus comparing a resurfacing to a transit project and trying to prioritize those. It gets difficult.
I agree. And then we're not trying to cram some of the
Yeah.
other important stuff too that we want to talk about. Go ahead, Liza.
Yeah, Liza Marin, Swatch County Commissioner. And I wanted to say that Swatch County is in favor of having this meeting and this discussion and having it as a separate meeting. That sounds really good. It's one of the goals that we've prioritized for Swatch County.
Okay, I think if there's anybody not in favor of having a separate meeting for the transit, let's go ahead and tackle that now. You're shaking your head, Rob. Okay. Could we get some prospective dates for, you're thinking January-ish sometime, Tim?
I guess if the San Luis Valley, votes, I guess, has a motion, approves it, says, hey, we want to have this meeting, then we can get back with you and Hugh on prospective dates.
And take care of that
Yeah.
offline?
I think first
Okay.
we just need to figure out for sure that you want to have that meeting.
Okay, let's go ahead and just have a vote on that. All those in favor of having a separate transit meeting for the TPR, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? Okay, there you go. We can look for an email reaching out to us about prospective dates. All right.
Awesome.
Sorry, Marissa,
Thanks.
for that
I
interruption.
like you guys make decisions. I like that. You want to go to the next slide? Okay, we covered this a little bit, but yeah, the agenda, like Julie said, it's intended to be conversational, but we will talk first about some project accomplishments, some success stories, things that we've been able to accomplish since you adopted your last plan. Aaron and I will tag team to talk about just some demographic trends, data trends that we're seeing, and then set the stage to hear from you about if your vision and goals have changed, any of your focus areas have changed. We'll talk a little bit about public involvement and then next steps. All right, and here, so just setting the stage a little bit further, just to make sure I don't know how many of you were involved 5 years ago, but in case you weren't, I'm going to talk a little bit about Transportation Planning 101 and how this all works together. You want to go to the next slide. So, like I said before, regional plans are really important because we really want to take a bottom-up approach to how we make investment decisions and set our priorities as a state. So these regional plans and transit plans inform the statewide plan, and it helps us prioritize projects for our 10-year plan. And then when those projects that are identified in our 10-year plan move forward and to be funded, they go into our 4-year fiscally constrained statewide transportation improvement program, or STIP. So you want some light reading at night, you can refer to the state and federal planning factors, but we try to summarize them in these 2 boxes. So there's a lot of overlap about what we're required to do in terms of planning between our state planning factors and federal. But just some key things, I won't read them all, is, we're required to look at safety, we're required to look at asset management and preservation, modal connectivity. That's why we have brought our friends from the Division of Transit and Rail to hear it, and why we want to place emphasis on that modal connectivity for transit and active transportation. We need to look at air quality, freight, travel and tourism, and resiliency. So those are just a couple of examples, but we try to think very multimodal and system-wide when we plan. If you want the next slide. Okay, so this really sets the stage for that policy directive 14 and what we're looking at in terms of goals. So the first guiding principle that we're looking at is of course advancing transportation safety. We're seeing a lot of, especially involving vulnerable road users, increased rates for serious injuries and fatalities on our transportation system. And it's a sombering trend that we need to pay some serious attention to. So that we'll be setting some targets relating to safety. The second area is fix our roads. I think we heard it in the stack overview. For those who might listen into that meeting, we hear it every month that that we need to really improve our infrastructure conditions, get back to the basics, and just put some increased attention to maintaining the highway system that we have. So we know that will be key in setting targets for our roadway system in terms of asset management. And the last area is what we're calling sustainably increased transportation choice. We want to have a transportation system for all and be able to have people to have options for getting where they need to go. And this also ties into our state's greenhouse gas targets that we need to adhere to for reducing air pollution. Questions? Yeah.
Real quick, Robert Vance, Monta Vista, a couple of things on that last slide. At the state level, are you guys looking at some of these things on fix our roads, some off-system roads that CDOT uses to divert traffic during certain projects and stuff? Monta Vista has 2 state highways that run through it, actually 3. And when they were doing their project on 160, they used 2 of the city's road for detours, one from North 285 and the road that was picked, Esequia and Newcomb. It's really not geared for the type of highway traffic that it saw. So I was just wondering, from the state level coming down through the region, are you guys looking at some of those off-system roads as what do we do when a CDOT highway is actually closed to public? Because I don't know if there's any priority on those or not yet, but has anybody even talked about that?
That really hasn't been part of the conversation yet, but we'll definitely take note of it. One thing we do try and do with all of our CDOT projects is we try and maintain traffic on it at all times, even when our projects are going on. So we at least have 1 lane of traffic going through to make sure that the highway traffic can still use the highway. Understanding Monta Vista was a unique situation for sure. but it's something we'll definitely keep in mind as we move forward on the projects.
I agree with his last statement. We had, when you guys did the Antonito Main Street, you guys used one of our county roads and it took a beating. So I think that would be something really good to look into. Thank you.
Go ahead, Liza.
Liza Marin, that also made me think about what you said about maybe looking at when you do the 112 maintenance, that you might close that highway. And I was just wondering where that might go and thinking kind of along the same lines these two gentlemen just spoke of.
And on the 112 project, the thought is the detour for that project for through highway traffic would be taking 285 down to Monte Vista and then across on 160 or vice versa. If you're coming from that direction, that would be the direction we would try and route the through traffic on. But making sure that the local traffic, the ag traffic, everybody else, the people that live out there that need to access the highway, making sure that they could still use the highway for those operations. That's what we're looking into to see how feasible all that would be. It would be during the middle of the summertime. So that's why we need to have more conversations and make sure the locals are aware that projects is coming and how we manage it.
Talked through some of this, I think, when I was speaking in the last slide, but you know, we will have by the time of your next meeting, the Transportation Commission will have taken action again to set some targets associated with all of these things. And we can talk about how you as a TPR and how your project list helps us as a state in terms of making traveling safer, what your priorities are in terms of you know, the roads that you know need to be better maintained, fixing our roads, that your transit needs. And then, you know, every region of the state is a little bit different and their role to play, of course, in meeting some of these themes and issues. All of our metropolitan areas have different targets when it comes to like the last one, which is reducing greenhouse gas emissions. But we also know that transit and regional transit will play a part in that too. So we'll talk about sort of how we as collectively as a state can address these issues, and then specifically how you as a TPR play a part in that as a state. We have a lot. I think I introduced this in the state and federal planning factors that we adhere to, but when we plan, we try to think of the system holistically. Everything sort of influences one another. So we don't like to, we'll look at safety together with transit and rail, how that, you know, greenhouse gas, active transportation, freight, asset management, all those things will be integrated throughout the process and also reflected as we develop project lists for the 10-year plan. All right.
May I ask one other thing or just maybe make a statement? Especially like the greenhouse gas mitigations, I'm all for that. But I really hope that your executive folks understand that being in rural Colorado is totally different than being on the Front Range. A lot of the things that are available on the Front Range simply are not available in these areas. So I really hope as the planning goes on that you guys at least consider that depending on where you are in Colorado, certain things are just simply not really a reality at this point. So, okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Adding, it's Nani. So, adding on the greenhouse, is there any plan on increasing your CNG alternative fuel station around the rural Colorado area, especially the south? Because right now, the closest is we have to go to Pueblo or Trinidad to get if you want natural gas or propane.
Okay.
Plans on that, but
We can, yeah.
definitely ask around.
Is that you're still got some presentation to do?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
so hey, real quick,
I was-
Marissa, just to
No,
comment,
yeah.
just to comment on how I think the sustainability greenhouse gas things will will come into play in the San Luis Valley. And it's more getting to the transit and active transportation, right? So those are the categories by which projects will be considered on the plan. But by default, a transit project, a new sidewalk project fits in that category without having to do any greenhouse gas measurements or things like that. So I think we're in this setting, that's how we can look at types of projects that fit that category. And again, that's not the only category that'll be considered, right? That's just one of the three. Yep.
It mostly applies to the Front Range, doesn't it,
Yeah.
Tim? I mean, they've got the non-attainment zones and all that
It
stuff.
does. And then it applies to regionally significant projects, so huge projects. We really don't have any proposed in our so this would be, if we were constructing a new highway, or if we were taking an existing 2-lane and making it, 4 lanes divided for several miles.
That sounds good. Let's go ahead and do that.
It's good, but
Can we go ahead and just write that down?
yeah. The closest thing that we have that might trigger that, I think, in the valley is looking at 285 between Swatch and Center. But we've been told that we're just looking at passing lanes or shoulders through there right now. And we've been told so far, we don't think that's going to trigger the threshold of which point we have to start looking at that. Yeah. It would be, yeah, exactly. And that's the type of project that, we want to look at for consideration in the plan and get prioritized. Yeah. All right. Sorry, Marissa.
No, that's great. Thanks for providing that context. Well, quick, just this slide showed sort of our overall timeline. We've already discussed how we're hoping to do this over the course of your next 4 meetings. So that would put us roughly around the spring, summer time of 2025. And so we'll take all the input from all 15 of our transportation planning regions. And that will roll up into a statewide plan that we're looking at adopting around August of 2025. And then from there, building off that, that's what's going to help us figure out how we're going to then prioritize projects for the update of the next 10-year plan. And we're thinking about looking at maybe December of 2025 for the next adopted 10-year plan.
And I'm going to jump in one more time, Marissa, just so folks understand that distinction. The 10-year plan projects are the ones that get funding. So after we go through this process and prioritize the top regional projects, once they make it to that green bar, that's when they don't get funding necessarily immediately, but they're on the plan to be funded. The 10-year plan is fiscally constrained.
They receive the strategic funding, so they receive the pots of money that don't come out of our normal asset programs. Oftentimes, we've had asset type projects on the regional transportation plans, but the long range, the 10-year plan is really where we can leverage the strategic funds too.
And there, of course, there might be other priorities on your plan that will be funded through different sources, right? There, transit is a good example. You have FTA funds that might be funding those, but yeah, like Julie said, these are, usually they're the bigger, more strategic projects that you have that will go into the 10-year plan. All right, let's talk about accomplishments. Is it Tim or Julie, who wants to talk about?
Yeah.
I'll jump in if you need help.
Yeah, Tony. All right, yeah, so our accomplishments in Region 5. So this first slide just kind of shows what I was describing earlier, right? So the list on the left is a long-range plan list. The list on the right is the 10-year plan list, right? So the top projects from the long-range plan list make it to the 10-year plan list and get funded. And then we have completed a lot of the 10-year plan projects. So there are openings this time around, which is why this update that we're talking about is so important. The next slide, please, Hugh. Nope, going backwards. Okay, so in Region 5, since the 10-year plan was implemented, which was 2019, we received in Region 5, or the total cost of the projects in the 10-year plan is about 700 million. Of that, over 400 million is the strategic funds from the legislature. So other types of funding can come to the table, right? A lot of times a project will get funds identified in the plan. We find out later it's not enough and we try to backfill, or on the front end, we knew we had funding to do something, but not everything we wanted to do. So we were able to apply the strategic funds to make those projects whole. Of the total projects in Region 5, 23 are still in the planning phase, 12 are in the design phase, 3 are currently under construction, and 9 are complete. And the purpose of this presentation is to kind of go over what has been completed. So the next slide. Okay, there we go. So State Highway 17 was widened, surface treatment and widened project was completed in 2021. Projects located on State Highway 17 north of Alamosa, extending all the way to the 285 junction. We were able to provide some widened shoulders and new pavement. And this was a pretty dangerous section of road that hadn't been significantly paved in the past 20 years. Okay, the next one is on 149. So this was one where we partnered with Region 3 because Hinsdale County is in Region 3, whereas Minerals in Region 5. So a rural paving project on 149 extended from the town of Creed past Lake City. It was a $14 million project. Another area that had low drivability, life, and rating. It's gotten a lot more traffic now that these areas have become significant tourist destinations.
Do you know were you guys able to get the shoulders as part of that? I mean, I guess I could ask the mineral folks too, because shoulders on 149 has been talked about for over 10 years.
Not really.
I know everybody always, it's brought up every time. there's a
Yeah.
Highway 149 discussion.
It was, at the end of the day, the cost of it was really just could cover the surface. We may have gotten some shoulders in a few spots.
I don't think we really did.
No,
So
okay.
One comment I was actually going to make is several of these projects, you're going to see us saying, oh, we've ticked it off the list. We know we haven't fully. 114 is another example. We didn't get all of that paved with the rural road surface treatment job. We need to come back and hit it again. So as we're going through the phases of the planning process and we're continuing to identify projects, keeping some of these projects out there like 145, 149 in shoulders and 114 more paving. Those are things that are in the back of our mind, but you guys reminding us of those too will be crucial.
Yeah, I just remember sitting in the meeting.
Yeah, I do too.
When we asked for the shoulders for Highway 17.
Yeah.
So it's just don't not talk about it. Ask for it.
Yeah.
Okay, then the next one when you're ready, Hugh. Okay, the next one we were able to do is State Highway 370 between State Highway 15 and 285. This was another rural paving project. This one was finished in 2023. It was a $2 million project and work was added to a much larger paving project on 160, which allowed us to kind of get more bang for our buck and just mobilize a contractor once through that project. So one thing to point out is a lot of these rural paving projects were not on the statewide plan because we knew at the time CDOT has asset dollars available for surface treatment. But when we got to the 10-year plan, headquarters was able to set aside a specific amount of funds for rural paving. This time around, and I don't know if Marissa, I'm maybe putting you on the spot, if you guys know if that's going to be the way it's done again, or if maybe this time it will all be together. And if there are rural paving projects that we know would need to be done in the valley, that we prioritize those on the list. Do you know if that decision's been made yet, Marissa? If there's going to be a separate pot of rural paving dollars?
That has not been made yet, but
Okay.
I will say, I do think we are going to be directed based on how the PD-14 conversations play out to probably put significant investments in the 10-year plan towards rural paving and asset management. So don't know how much, but I would wager, I was betting, I would think a significant portion would go to it.
Yeah, and this distinction is just whether or not it goes through. So the funding will be there for those types of projects. It's just, are they looked at separately as a separate category, or do we look at them combined with everything else?
Just a question. So that's a conversation, the PD-14 is a transportation commission discussion. So if we had an opinion, should we talk to Mark about that?
Yes.
Thank you.
And it will also be discussed at STAC at their next meeting in September for a recommendation to commission.
Okay, the next one. Let's see. Sorry, I think we might have skipped one here. 114.
We should have 5285.
Okay. We can, so we're currently working on this one. 3 active construction projects in the 10-year plan. The first is the reconstruction of 50 and 285 intersection in Poncha Springs. This work's being coupled with rural paving project on 50, and hope to have that wrapped up by the end of the year. And going up towards Monarch. And then there was one more, just one slide back, which was 114.
Page 5 twice.
Oh, okay. Interesting. So anyway, I can talk about it regardless. It's so State Highway 114 between Saguache heading towards Gunnison was another rural paving project that we partnered with Region 3. The project was finished last year and targeted the areas with the lowest drivability life. We weren't able to get, and this kind of goes back to what Julie was saying, we weren't able to get that whole segment like we wanted to, but we were able to get the worst segments done. Kenny's guys have also been able to hit a few other segments. But yeah, I think that's it on the completed projects in the 10-year plan.
Can I ask a question about the 28550?
Yeah.
Has the design, the redesign, has that been approved, and is that going forward and it's not approved there?
Yeah, did you receive the email that came out through the public information coordinator with the project?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I've also been told that the plan was also, there was pushback from the contractors, so I was just wanted to clarify that.
Last I heard, that plan is what we are moving forward with at this point in time. So new signal pole's been ordered, concrete's going into the new locations, and we anticipating being fully wrapped up by about mid-November. We'll have the new configuration open and ready to go, hopefully by the end of October, as long as the signal pole shows up on time.
So it's mid-November now, not October.
Mid-November, so end of October, we'll receive the new signal pole mid-October. And then we have to put it up and get everything else configured. We'll get that new intersection configuration hopefully opened up by the end of October. And then we're going to need a couple more weeks to take out that existing asphalt where the detour area has been through the project. If that makes sense. Mhm.
All right, are we moving? Okay. I'm going to turn it to Aaron Willis, who leads our statewide and regional planning, to talk a little bit about demographics. These next slides hopefully won't come as a surprise to all of you. You guys live and work here. But really they're just to get you thinking about maybe later as we get into projects or your focus areas for the plan, but really just the purpose of including these is not to educate you about your own region, but more just to get you thinking about transportation and how these things influence each other.
Yep. Thank you, Marissa. Yeah, so let's start off with that in mind. Let's start off with population. What we've done with each set of these slides. So we'll roll through population, employment, look at disproportionately impacted communities. But what we've done is we've started at a point where right about where you close to when you adopted your last plan, creating another 4-year window to look at what might have changed from 2018 to 2022. So broadly speaking, we've seen a good amount of growth in the TPR. And as a state, you'll see at the comparison at the bottom of each one of these slides, a fair amount of growth statewide too. So very consistent with what we're seeing at a statewide level. So next slide. Yeah, you're seeing a similar, generally a similar view from an employment perspective. Some areas of the TPR probably are growing in employment more than others are. So, but broadly, we're seeing that same sort of uptrending growth in employment along with population. So next slide. And then when you look at sort of the TPR average and the statewide average, you see incomes in the county, probably no surprise, just slightly lower than the statewide average. Next slide. And then persons living in poverty, just you see just a slightly higher percentage versus the rest of the state, which means that from a planning perspective, from a priority perspective, there perhaps is a need for that robust transit conversation, which helps people perhaps living with lower incomes to be able to fully take advantage of job opportunities and other educational opportunities. Let's go to the next slide. Age, yep, just seeing slightly higher median age by county versus the rest of the state. And next slide.
Aaron, real quick.
Yeah, we did that for consistency's sake, and we've heard that in other TPRs too. So if you want us to go back and maybe meeting number 2, look at it differently with the state demographer's numbers. I think you'll probably find something pretty consistent though, but we can. Okay.
Sometimes those numbers are different. Having done demographics for this region, I just felt like Castillo was more accurate.
Okay.
Just an aside.
Okay. So lastly, we want to talk about disproportionately impacted communities. Our plan is to make sure that everybody has a voice in the process. And that's regardless of your income, regardless of your how much you spend on your housing, regardless of race, regardless of language, regardless of where you might live. And so what we've done is we've mapped these at a statewide level. We've focused in here on your TPR. The brownish section is the areas that are in disproportionately impacted communities, meaning they fall within one of those categories. And what we've also done is we've outlined the cities and the town boundaries that are also in disproportionately impacted communities. Oftentimes, when you're looking at something at a census tract or census block level, it'll show really big, but really all the folks are within the blue section. So. Once again, probably not new information, but just from our perspective, we want to make sure that everybody who wants to have a say in the prioritization process and helping us collectively sort of say what's important and has a voice and an opportunity to participate. Same thing with race. You have a very diverse TPR in general, far more diverse than the state. And then language too, a lot of languages spoken here, probably more so than what's spoken in the state. And then data trends. Did you want to tackle that or keep going? Keep rolling. All right, let's go. So what we've done here with our data, once again, just to try to create that conversation and make sure that not only are we looking at the folks that we're trying to plan for, but making sure that we're also looking at the proper data that also helps us to make very informed decisions. So we've grouped this next section of data to correspond with those three categories that Marissa spoke to earlier, those three sort of major Policy Directive 14 categories, which are safety, fixing our roads, and the sustainable increase of transportation options. So let's start off with crashes. And so what we've done here is we've looked at crash by VMT, or vehicle miles traveled. And then we've also looked at, and just as reference on the side, provided everybody with this crash severity type. So how CDOT looks at a minor crash versus a severe crash. And so when we take all of that together, we do have counties that are having slightly more crashes than other parts of the TPR. And then also you'll see this increase correspond with some of your more major corridors throughout the TPR. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Is that due mostly to wildlife impact? Yes.
Is it?
Wildlife. It's due to wildlife impact, which we have a project going to add this fall to address some of the area, not all of the area. And then it's also due to some winter crashes we've been seeing up on Levita Pass the last couple of years.
Speaking of wildlife crashes, we've also included this slide, which is really, I guess, when you take a look at the presentation later, you'll see and have an opportunity to click on the link here, which takes you to our wildlife crash dashboard, and it's broken out by county. And so you're able to see specifically the type of wildlife crashes that happen per year at a county level, and then the animal type too. Clearly across the entire state, deer is the highest. The deer auto conflict is the highest one that you'll see. So now, when we look at overall crashes, we do want to focus in on fatalities and serious injuries. And so we've again done that analysis from 2018 to 2022. Both your fatalities and your serious injuries map those locations, and sort of again you see just a broad I would say pretty equal distribution of those type of crashes throughout the TPR. Yes.
If you're able to do like hotspot analysis, are there any? And that's not a question of
Yeah.
No, so that region is actually using this same data to do a safety study around the region right now, and looking for those hotspots and places we think we can do correctable engineering type projects. Jen, did you want to elaborate on that at all? If you're there and can talk.
I am here,
Okay.
sorry. Yeah, I mean, we are using crash data. I'm not sure, I know I heard you guys mention wildlife. Wildlife was not really considered in this study because that's kind of covered with another study that we have. But overall, yeah, we're doing crash data and we're looking for hotspots, and we're really gearing this towards some sort of hotspots that we could possibly use safety funding towards, because that has been kind of one of our biggest issues here in Region 5 is that we need to get that benefit cost ratio in order to address these problems. As of now, that they're doing field visits on the top 15 locations, and then they're going to report back to me probably in about a month, maybe two. Let's see, we're end of August. So maybe in about a month on what they believe could be done to correct whatever issues they found at the hotspots. And then from there, we're going to build a report, and that will give me kind of a jumping off point of some ideas for safety improvements around the region.
And are these accidents, are these only motor vehicle, or there's also bicycles, pedestrians, whatever else that may have rode on it?
Yeah, it's really whatever crashes that are reported by state patrol or other local law enforcement to the Department of Revenue through the records keeping system. So.
Yep. That's something that's on there.
If there was data on livestock auto conflicts, or if it's just the wild, yeah.
So, well, I mean, it would be collected if somebody would report an incident to state patrol or another law enforcement agency that would give the data into our Department of Revenue system. So we do every now and then have a cow versus car or something like that show up in the data when we're looking at it. Definitely not super common.
From a body shop perspective, it's more wild.
Is there data on recreational based crashes or sports like tourism? Let's say, because if you're a visitor and you're not familiar with the area that's going, is there any kind of place we can get data on demographic that normally come, that are visitors when they come, the types, the area?
Do you know that?
I know that when they do crashes, they collect a lot of, I mean, obviously they collect everybody who was involved. But I don't think we've ever analyzed like person who was involved or person who might have been caused their, city or state of origin. I don't think we've
Yeah.
done.
This is Jen Allison. Yeah, you're correct. We don't go into too much demographic. We do have a place where it does state that there was, a cause of the crash reported unfamiliar with roadway. But I don't know if we've ever, I mean, that could be something we could use to
But I
filter
think-
the data.
I
But
think the question is more oriented towards, do we have data that we collect that looks at the different areas that are seeing tourism influence on the highways?
All the above.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
okay.
do we have
Wait.
any of that type of data for just
I-
tourism influence, not necessarily related to safety or crashes?
I would have to check with the safety folks.
And the reason why I asked also on the demographic, when you were talking about data and transit need, and I noticed like for the rural area for SLV, most of it's like 65,000, right? Total population. But in technicality, they have about traffic of, I would say like double of
Mhm.
that, depending on the time of the year, like summertime, springtime, winter, and that's based on people coming for either they're here for sports-based recreation or they're here for leisure recreation. So we're wondering how we can also kind of consider those demographic when we're planning our transit.
Almost like a seasonal adjustment for their
Right.
crashes. I see what you're saying. Let me look into that. We hadn't brought that information, but we can certainly take a look and see what we can find and then bring that back for your meeting number 2, if that's something that's interesting.
There might be some other offices outside of CDOT that has some of that information for you, some.
Yeah, I got some from Park Services. And National Park Service collects quite some few data, but just as relate to national parks. So but it doesn't collect in other areas. It's like they say I should talk to like CDOT actually.
Okay. You might touch base with some of the people around here. We might have some other suggestions for.
Yeah, hi, Barry Van Sant with Succeed. in Saguache at the intersection of Highway 114 and 285 is kind of a notorious kind of near miss area that doesn't get, near misses don't get recorded. But I just noticed in this particular graphic that you have the highway labeled 285 right on top of that intersection. You might want to scoot that up so we can actually see
if
what's
there's a
going
car
on
there.
at that intersection, because it's that's, we call that the tip of the gun barrel. And it's a good nickname for a potential area with a lot of trouble, but
Yeah, we could do that.
Yeah.
thank you.
And these, yeah.
Make sure there's nothing
sometimes those-
underneath hidden.
Yeah, we try to take kind of just auto adjust those labels, but yeah, that was a bad placement. And one thing I'll plug for your next meeting too is we have all this in an online interactive map where you can turn these data layers on and off yourselves, which, we try to pick out what we thought were the most interesting as it related to the PD14 concepts, but we're hoping to have that tool complete here in the next month or so, and it'll be ready by your second meeting, so that when you start looking at your project lists and things like that, you can actually then move the map and zoom in, zoom out, and I think that will be a really cool addition this time as we go into the planning process. It was actually built, if you were part of the TPR boundary study that we looked at, we actually built that tool for that purpose, but I think it has a lot of great utility outside of that, so we're gonna use it for planning as well.
Yeah. So wanted to touch briefly on vulnerable roadway users. So the Federal Highway Administration has developed this definition of vulnerable roadway users that includes walking, biking, scooters, people with personal mobility devices, walkers, wheelchairs, and people on foot. It doesn't include motorcycles, but it includes all those other groups. And so what we've done is we've sort of taken out the data where someone would fall within that category and provide that on this map. And so that's also denoted by fatalities and serious injuries. And you'll see those sort of also distributed throughout the TPR. And this is certainly something that we can spend a good amount of time on when you have your active transportation and transit special session as well. All right, so yep. I think we skipped some real quick because we'll go right into our assets.
I think you did skip one here.
Yeah, I think we start off with
One more behind that.
with
Should be
drivability life. Yeah. Yeah, there it is. So CDOT has created this measure that looks at the drivability life of our roads, meaning how much how much life or drivable life is left remaining in our roadway segments. And so we've categorized those as high, moderate, and low. And so this map just shows a fair amount of moderate and low drivability life throughout the region. So certainly things that Julie and her team are continually working on, but this is where we are as a snapshot in time as of 2022. So there's probably some work that's been done recently, but when we do this analysis, we are a little bit behind. But there's probably been some recent work that has helped to improve some of the red and some of the yellow. Let's go to the next.
Yeah, and real quick, Aaron, just so to make that point, like that red segment on 114 through Saguache County, right? That was in that area that was treated. The data is just not updated yet because that was a recent project.
Again, here we're looking at, under the category of asset management, all of our bridges, all of our major culverts. And this just gives you an idea of all the maintenance responsibility for both bridges and culverts throughout the TPR. Next slide. And so in terms of bridges in poor conditions, just the three that we were able to identify. And then in terms of culverts, which is on the next slide, I think just one major culvert that's categorized in that poor condition.
If I'm not mistaken, that's under replacement right now, is that right?
So we're about
And the bridges, we have projects undergoing, at least in the design phase, to get
Nice.
those addressed too, so.
Nice.
Yeah.
So when we pull out I'm sorry.
So I was curious, is there any conversation around the narrowness of some of the bridges? Like there's been a conversation about 112 between Center and Del Norte and the condition, how narrow those bridges are, that they're dangerous. And I'm curious if that is a data point that you collect.
Kevin.
We're aware that the bridges on 112 are pretty narrow. I tried to actually work on them to get them widened and I couldn't get funding to go for it. Our maintenance asset funding for bridge repairs does not include widening it. It only includes fixing items that need to be repaired, like bridge joints, deck condition, that kind of thing. If the bridge goes into a poor condition, it gets qualifies for bridge enterprise funding. If we replace a bridge, we would widen it out to present standards. But unless we can get that kind of funding, we're stuck with what we got.
So when we pull out the roadways that are in poor condition, this is broadly what we get. And again, we've got a bit of a delay in the data. So some of these have been addressed. But broadly speaking, this is the current condition of identifying all of our roadways in poor condition. All right, next on the, certainly not last in terms of our asset management, but last in this section is transit and mobility. So Krista's here to help with that transit conversation.
Yes, hello. So I am Krista. I'm from a DTR planning team, to remind you, and I just want to talk a little bit about transit options in the San Luis Valley TPR. So what we're looking at here is basically data we've already collected for other efforts we're working on. Specifically, we're working on the transit connection study. So some of you may have heard some whisperings about this study that we're starting in DTR and also working with our Office of Innovative Mobility on the mobility services team. So the TCS is a completely different, it is not part of the statewide plan, but we are, here we're trying to, to kill two birds with one stone, having us both here and talking to you all. So basically what we just want to show you is the data we have today. So what we want you all to notice is if anything's missing, because what we're going to be doing is a gaps analysis, and we're going to be looking at both spatial and temporal gaps that we're missing in our statewide transit network. So we want to make sure that we are connecting all of our regions of the state to each other. And this is just kind of an effort for us to be planning our statewide services, specifically mostly bus staying and future passenger rail efforts, front range passenger rail and the mountain rail. Although those don't particular super affect this region, but I just want to throw this out there. If you see anything big and missing, we have a link in these slides, and you can also contact me directly, and I will pass on any questions or comments about this to our team. Yeah, so to explain this, you'll see here we have our bus staying lines there in purple. And the different bus staying stops refer to whether or not there is a local transit agency connection at that stop, whether they can get on different services. So the purple ones are our state bus staying service, and then local transit agencies are in the orange there. Any questions?
I'll connect with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Next slide. Okay, and then this is our per capita transit ridership by region right now. So we only have our neighbor to neighbor volunteers on this list. I think we get this from NTD. And some of this data, the most recent data we have for many of these are you can see like a year old. Some of them are a couple years old. So if you are a transit agency and you don't see your data here and you want to make sure that we have the most updated data before we run our analysis, please reach out to me. Yeah, any questions?
So that's Mountain Valley Transit is now, was the Chafee Shuttle, but I would ask, put Mustang ridership numbers in here because I think there could be a lot more done here in the valley for Mustang ridership because it's low, but the Crested Butte to Denver line is
Absolutely. Very popular.
very,
Yeah.
overcrowded and has recently seen many denials past the Salida stop.
Yeah, no, we are very aware of the Crested Butte situation, and it is like it is a top priority for us to be getting another bus on that route. I think we might just be waiting to have the bus and the personnel, but it is definitely something we want to start. We want to stop turning people away for sure. We don't ever want to have that problem. It's great that people love our service and they want to ride it, but we definitely want to be serving everyone who wants to ride.
And the Chaffee County Commissioners did send a letter to the head of DTR and Kay Kelly.
Yeah.
And it sounds like our executive director they're trying to line up some time for our executive director to come over and have a conversation about that further so they can fully hear your concerns.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, the only other thing I'll mention is that as the services have increased at the Colorado Springs Airport, there's no direct route from Chaffee County or the Valley to Colorado Springs in that area.
Okay, yeah.
And I think, that would be something to look at as far as demand going there versus going to Denver.
Yeah,
So.
absolutely. Thank you for those comments. Any other questions?
Mike just mentioned it, Krista, but yeah, I would just get them updated to Mountain Valley Transit from neighbor to neighbor or the Chaffee Shuttle. They've rebranded themselves in the last year, so.
Gotcha. And I will pass it back.
So the next section we'll talk about really is perhaps the most interactive section. So it's definitely something that we can discuss now in terms of changes. We'll get into changes that are going on that are more broad spread, more like development related changes and economic and land use related changes. And then we'll talk about your vision and goals, those key pieces that are in your current 2045 plan. Certainly things that we can talk about now. And if nothing comes to mind, or you just need a little bit more time to think about any kind of changes, we'll be providing out a survey where you can maybe take your time, give it a little bit more thought, and just fill out this survey that will review your vision, your goals, and asking this question again, and then that will come directly back to me and my team. So, but first, let's see if there's any comments on new regional influences. These are things that fall within some of these categories that would influence the region in general. Travel patterns. Is there some kind of new growth in tourism or military development that you all are seeing? Is there some major demographic or economic change, some big employment that's slated to come on board, some new big development, new major expansion of education facilities? Any of these things that we need to know about that would then help us to factor in. We might need to factor that in our priorities discussion.
I can start first. So on the economic change, the growth in tourism. So I come here, I'm here 15 since May. Since March, I come here 15 days of the month, and we come at nighttime, we leave at nighttime with Frontier. So Frontier have this great service that you can get anywhere in United States via Frontier connection from Denver. once you're in Denver. And most of the time, so we have spent a quite more than expected time in Denver airport. And a lot of people prefer to leave, like go out, do something in town and come back because sometimes their flights are delayed. So I'm suggesting if we can look and kind of have those tourism. I know we focus mostly on locals, right? And a lot of people, they would love to come. I've actually taking people to to the Sandu, and they enjoyed it. They weren't coming, they were on their way to California. So, and one was also just traveling from Europe and decided to spend their time here. And that was the best thing that highlighted their trip. So, what's the plan in kind of looking more into tourism and making sure that people, that you don't have to have a car, you know, because it's a nightmare if you don't have a car. Like you cannot function here without a car. So, and the airport, you only have the rentals most of the time. If you don't book on time, you're done. And, you know, and the transportation RTD is excellent if you're within Denver area, but then outside of it, you're not. And then if you can go to like Goomert, they they provide good transportation, but Muscan is just not, it's not doing it. Like there's some more work to be done for those visitors. So what can we do to at least consider recreations and tourism and just temporal visitors that are just passing through and include them in the plan?
In terms of their voices, being
No.
able to participate? Oh, provide services.
Service, yeah.
Okay. So that's a good question. So
I think it's a good segue into the vision, right? Because it actually lists tourism. So I think the next slide might answer. the
Well,
question.
no, I think I think there's a couple that might want to flag some of the other patterns before we go to the vision.
Yeah,
'cause
yeah.
the Vision's a whole other way of thinking.
Yeah. But yeah, let's talk about that when we talk about the vision. Yeah.
Yeah, so I work for Senator Bennett, and I think most of you know, I cover Park Chaffee in the San Luis Valley. So I'm lucky to be an oddball that covers the mountain US 285 corridor is my beat. And so one of the things some of you guys are going to laugh at me for saying, but it is a thing that I see, is the impacts to US 285 as what I like to call the mountain I-25.
Mountain.
You're all gonna laugh at me. This has been my like secret strategy to brand it, but I think there could be a conversation to be had about the impacts of tourism and growth as the spokes of the wheel, as people get out of Denver, they hit Chaffee, and if you talk to folks in Park County, they literally cannot use their highway for most of the summer. They can't even get in and out of Bailey, and then it ripples down to the valley in a different level, but we share it. So I just share that because I happen to be here and there's people in the room, so apologize for that. But I would also say, I know, building on what you said about the sand dunes visitation has doubled, if not tripled, since the last time we did this plan. They have more than 500,000 visitors a year. So depending what data you're looking at, I would just say for the US 160 Alamosa to the Highway 150 turnoff, I know this is probably, there may be data feeding this or not, but if there's a passing lanes strategic vision for the whole TPR region, I'm glad to hear you talk about the gun barrel from center to Sawatch. That's great. But I think a lot of folks would love to see an option to talk about Alamosa to the Highway 150 turnoff. So I've said enough. Thanks.
Thank you.
Could I piggyback on some of that? Not only tourism is coming, I mean, I see being in Monte Vista, we see traffic from 285 very heavily on Fridays and through the weekends. Same on 160. But we're also seeing a lot of movement from some of the more higher priced counties such as Chaffee County, definitely to Sawatch County. And we have quite a few residents right now that are coming into Monte Vista. So I'm assuming that's happening in South Fork and Del Norte and all of those. So we are going to start seeing some more impacts, and people are really discovering what the valley actually has to offer as far as tourism. You know, you can go to Breckenridge and Vale and do one run and wait 4 hours for the next one. Or you can drive 3 hours and have all day at Wolf Creek, you
Right.
know?
This is good. Good.
I might just piggyback off of that too, if you don't mind. I think one of the things that we are seeing, just to kind of add to Rob's point, is that sort of the bubble that happened on the Front Range and I-25 corridor, then extended down the 285 corridor and other areas. And I think really this plan specifically gives us a chance to be ahead of some of these growths that we predict are going to happen as folks have been priced out of other communities. Also, just give a quick plug. We've got about a 400 unit housing development coming online, which is about 7% of Alamosa's entire housing stock.
That's great.
So we are still waiting on an access permit for that. It's been on the list for about 15 months, but sorry, just have to plug that in really quick as well. However, I think we are seeing a lot of these trends, and I think we do have a chance to actually get ahead of it instead of be reactionary.
Very good. Good. Anybody have anything else for Aaron on that?
Just from our perspective at Mountain Valley Transit, people that are searching for transportation options here in Alamosa, and as she said, getting to the sand dunes, they've inquired about our services, getting to the sand dunes or getting picked up from the airport and those types of things. And because we only operate fixed routes here on specific days, we weren't able to help them. But
Yeah, I don't know that we can identify one single thing that is increasing the usership on our roads, but I think we can all agree it's a kind of conglomeration of just steady growth that we're really starting to see the impact.
Real quick, one thing I'd like to say, these are all great ideas regarding segments. So I highly encourage everybody on CDOT's website under the San Luis Valley, the existing plan, there is a full list of existing projects. Study those and see what you think is missing, right? So as it relates to Highway 160, 285, and then at the next meeting, that's where we want to have those specific ideas. And I think we all recognize in general what we need. And this is part of the discussion, is to get people thinking about what we need in general, but start thinking about it as it relates to this highway mile marker to this highway mile marker. This is the problem area. This is the congested area. This is where we would like to see something.
Before we move on to that, could we get somebody to send those links to those specific lists?
Sure.
I mean,
Yeah,
CDOT's
I'll
website
send
can
it
be
to
kind of
you
hard
right
to
now,
find some of
and
that
then you
stuff.
can send it to the whole group.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, and there's no one here from Costilla County. So the Blanca Mill for freight and for additional employment, I don't know where it sits demographically. I don't know if it really actually existed in the last plan.
Oh, okay, good.
If it did, maybe folks remember, but this is in Blanca.
I think it was right after the plan. Right after.
And we are meeting with Costilla County, I think later this afternoon. Yeah. So with our county meeting, so we'll make sure we will be flagging the plan and needing to be engaged with the TPR.
Go ahead, Liza.
This is just a question. I don't know if it's appropriate right now, but, and I should know the answer to this question, but I know for our road and bridge, highway use tax funds are what we are funded by. And I don't know if that's true for CDOT as well. But I'm just curious with the trend towards electronic vehicles and them not pitching into those funds, if there's a plan, like a revenue plan for CDOT around just the electrification of vehicles.
I can start a little. Yes, so a lot of CDOT's funding does come from both the federal and the state gas tax. The state of Colorado did pass Senate Bill 260 several years ago, which did institute higher vehicle registration fees for the electric vehicles that are scheduled to continue to increase over time. The hope is that will help backfill for some of that lost gas tax revenue. And then there's been some other fees put in place, like the retail delivery fee. So when you get something from Amazon, I think it's 25 cents a delivery or something like that. There's that fee should be hoping to come back into the system to help backfill for some of that gas tax as well. So state legislature is paying attention to it. The models all showed that the revenues coming in from Senate Bill 260 should at least keep us whole. I'm not sure if it'll grow at the rates that it would be nice if it grows at, but our accountants at CDOT are paying very close attention as we're starting to see those fees come in and whether or not it's doing what we anticipated. Right now, most of those fees are new enough. We can't say for sure if they're on track or not, but we're taking a hard look.
It's also anticipated for us to get a fuller view of our revenue projections within the next few months. So ideally, we would be having that look of revenue, at least that initial look of potential revenue at a region level at your meeting, what we're calling meeting number 2, the second time you'll see sort of a group of us come down.
This is really great discussion. I think it gives us a lot to think about and prepare for your next meeting. Like Aaron said too, we're gonna do a survey for your TPR members that we'll send out that asks these questions again, so you can kind of take some time and add on, or if people aren't here today, they'll have an opportunity to share their input. I don't know where we are in time, but I'll try. Oh.
Yeah, I could just try to go through the last bit of it real quick, or.
Oh, do we not? Okay.
Yeah. So vision and goals, this is what Marissa's saying we can get back to. I can send this out. It's a pretty easy, very straightforward survey, allows you to just to provide comments. We'll collect those and then bring those back to you at our next meeting. So let's go to the next slide, which is, I think, the goals. You have a lot of goals. You'll go through those comprehensively in your survey. Maybe there's some things that we need to continue to emphasize. Maybe there's some things we need to delete. Maybe there's some things that we just need a little bit of a tweak or a modification. So you'll be able to make those changes. Let's go to the next one. And then focus areas, finally. I think this really speaks to the conversation we had earlier about tourism. It sounds like that already needs to continue to be a focus area of your plan and a dedicated sort of focused discussion on tourism. And so that seems to be one of the most important elements about the TPR. But you'll again get a chance to review these, make sure we got these right as well. Let's go to the next slide.
Quick question on that one.
Mhm.
Are those listed by priority or just listed?
You'll be able to list, those are just how they were ordered in the plan, but you'll be able to prioritize them in the survey. And then public involvement, real quick. Let's go. Yeah, you've got 2 interim opportunities. We've got an active transportation survey that's open now, and I think this has actually been extended till September. So please take a moment, fill out that survey. And then there's a scheduled September 4th State Strategic Highway Safety Plan listening session, which I think there's a virtual option there as well. And then the contact information is on this slide as well. So that'll be all things safety. And I think that rounds us out. So this is the basic structure of the active transportation session that you all agreed on hosting. So I won't dwell on that. And then I think that's it. So.
Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just looking at the invite and I have 2 to 3:30 on the 4th instead of the slide said 1:30, starting at 1:30. So I just wanted to make sure we had the right info up for anyone who might be attending. Right there, 1:30 to 3. My invite says 2 to 3:30. So
it is 2 to 3:30. I think the timing got changed after these slides were created.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And I can send that out to make sure everybody gets that invitation.
So there will be an in-person listening session on that day from 2 to 3:30 in Durango at the rec center, knowing that's a long ways away for you guys. I pushed hard to have them come to the Valley, but I wasn't successful. But there is a virtual option on that day. And then there will be another virtual meeting, I think later in September, that will be fully virtual as well. And we'll make sure we get those opportunities out.
Does that,
Regarding the survey, um, regarding the survey that you mentioned about the visioning process, are only voting members receiving that survey? Is it just to the general?
I think it's everybody who attends the TPR, right?
It's everybody on the mailing list for the TPR meetings, and everybody on the mailing list is more than welcome to fill it out because we want to get a very broad perspective.
Awesome.
are you on that list, Annie?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that the conclusion of that
That's
part of our?
That's it.
Okay. Do we have any questions for Aaron after that presentation? I have a question just about where we are exactly in our development plan. I know this is our first TPR and we're having our county meeting this afternoon and you've met with a few already. Are we the last county you meet with, or is there still a few?
You're one of our last 3 counties. So we're
Wow.
meeting with you, Costillo and Conejos. And we have this information in the slides for the county meeting so we can get your other commissioners briefed up on it as well.
Okay.
But really, this is just the beginning of the process and we really won't seriously start talking projects till October or
Okay.
sorry, November, I think is our next TPR meeting with the Valley.
Very good. Thank you. Okay. Next on the list is a grants update. Tim, you got that for us?
Yeah, and I'll try to be really quick. The first grant update wanted to let you guys know about is the Revitalizing Main Streets program. This is for small multimodal economic projects like streetscaping, signage, sidewalks. It's not for really big projects though. Max is 250,000. The min is about 10,000. This current round closes really quickly, 6 days. However, the next round will reopen immediately. So if you haven't gotten this round, don't worry about it. The next round will reopen, and every quarter it opens and closes. Michael Snow is next with a big presentation on MMOF, so I'll skip that one. TAP, I don't have too much of an update other than that, that call was in 24. Let's see, Safe Routes to School. Yeah, we can keep going. You're good. Safe Routes to School is the one that just opened. It closes at noon on November 4th, 2024. There's 7 million statewide to award. The program has been expanded to also include safe routes to high schools. Previously, it was just, I think, kindergarten, middle school, pre-K, and elementary, but now it's also to high schools. And then there's some federal opportunities out there. Safe Streets and Roads for All, that's for planning demonstration, that closes pretty quickly. One that will be of interest, I think, to a lot of municipalities is the National Culvert Removal Replacement Restoration Grant. That closes in September. And then the Reconnecting Communities and the Railroad Crossing Elimination Grant are some of the other ones out there. These federal opportunities are managed by FHWA, not CDOT. So unlike in the past where CDOT's been a pass-through for a lot of federal grants, these now go directly from the feds to you guys. So you guys would apply for them directly, get the money directly. If you're interested in any of these programs, let me know and I can put you in touch with the person at FHWA who can help you apply. And then I think hopefully Michael's on and can do MMOF for us.
Michael Snow, are you
Yep,
up there?
I'm here just trying to click buttons. Here we go. Hi, folks. Let's see if my video will work. I should be working just fine. It looks like somebody's got slides up. If you don't mind, I'm going to share from my screen because Hugh just sent me, since we spoke, I got a little bit of the couple statuses on current MMF projects for your region that I'll want to share, if that's possible. All right, here we go. All right, let me know if this comes clear for you guys. You should be seeing, well, I'm starting in the middle of the slide deck. Let's not do that. Are y'all seeing a Mustang bus?
Yep, we got it.
Okay, good. All right, we're on track. So I want to spend some time working with you all today and discussing the MMOF program. That's our multimodal options. And there's a little bit of work and discussion for you all to do around this program today. So I'll spend some time, and when we get to the agenda, I'll spend some time just getting you updated with a quick overview of the program. For those of you maybe in the room that aren't familiar with the guts of this program, I'll give a little overview, a little bit of update on the current projects that you have awarded funded to throughout the San Luis Valley region. And then any change, some changes that have come to the program just in the last couple of months, including updates to funding and such things. And then it's going to be kind of handed back to you. And as I mentioned, there's some work and discussion for the TPR to take on today in preparing for your subsequent selection of any other MMOF projects. So now my screen's not advancing. There we go. So let me just start with a quick overview. Those of you that have seen this have seen it many times. This is from the statutes that govern the MMOF program. It outlines the goals of the program. It is intended to fund multimodal investments. Typically, those are alternative to vehicle transportation. And its intent is to benefit our seniors, make it possible for them to age in place, to improve access and options for those that live in our disproportionately impacted communities and rural communities, those with disabilities, our school-age children, and also as it's called, the mitigation options as well. It has a greenhouse gas reduction component. That is that it's also intended to impact, or rather to reduce and mitigate, the greenhouse gases emitted from transportation activities. So further, it defines, what is meant by multimodal projects. So it gives a list, and that includes both the fixed route and on-demand transit, and that's for any phase and type of work in that transit arena, capital or operations. Transportation demand management, those are what we just call TDM. Any mobility projects enabled by new technologies, multimodal studies, any of your bike and pedestrian improvements, safety, access, trails, that sort of thing. Modeling, transportation modeling type of studies and so forth. And then your greenhouse gas mitigation projects, specifically that reduce vehicle miles traveled or increase the use of multimodal travel. All right, that's for the quick overview of what the purpose of the program is. Other things to just touch base on is that the MMOF funds are distributed by formula to all the transportation planning regions, and then the TPR itself has the authority to competitively select and award funds to projects. So that's your responsibility and role in it all, and hence we'll spend some time talking about that today. Projects that are awarded are then overseen by CDOT through our the contracting and oversight we do for any of the other programs that CDOT runs. The program comes with a statutory default 50-50 match rate, which means for every project funded with any MMOF funds, at least half of the funding for the project has to come from some other source. So for example, if you had $1 million project, 50% of that project can be funded with MMOF. The other 50% can be matched. And this is very unique to MMOF. It can be matched with any other source of funds, including another, let's say, FHWA source of funds, or state grants, or local funds. Any and all of those other types of funds can serve as the match requirement for the project. And we'll talk a minute too about match rate reductions, because there are a couple different ways that the required match rate can be reduced, and we'll get to that in a minute. The program comes with some minimum project sizes. 300,000 is the minimum for an infrastructure project, and that's for the total project size, not for the award amount. Any other types of projects, such as your transit operations or vehicles or planning projects, that can have as low as a $25,000 minimum grant amount. I'm moving kind of quick. Any questions so far?
Yeah, go ahead, Liza.
What is the maximum on the?
There
reception?
is no maximum. Obviously there's a finite amount of funding that is allocated to the San Luis region for you to award. So you're kind of limited to that amount, of course. But the projects themselves can be of any size.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there a dead
Yep.
for the project? Is there a deadline to apply for the grant?
Yeah, I didn't mention that. As the TPR has the authority for awarding, you also have the authority to decide when you schedule your call and selection of projects. Now, granted, it's we all kind of have a part in using funding efficiently, and that includes getting funds programmed to projects as early as possible so that they're not sitting around. We don't just do it any old time. You want to do it sooner rather than later, but that schedule is totally up to you as a TPR to decide when you schedule that. Okay. Lastly, there are project reporting requirements, and we seek some annual sort of reporting of status from the local agencies that are awarded. And we ask the TPR to assist in compiling that. And CDOT itself has a responsibility to report the status of MMOF spending to our legislature. And we do that every fall. Okay, so let's get on to projects awarded by San Luis Valley TPR. Or rather, let's talk about statewide, just in general. And this is an issue that I think we all kind of have to play a partnership in. And that is that the progress on current MMOF projects is really quite slow, and we're working on getting things used more efficiently. So just as an example, the MMOF program got its start, and the first projects were awarded in 2020. Back then, we were looking at a sum total of about $76 million, and 109 projects were awarded those funds. Today, we are still not quite even 50% of those funds are spent statewide. Then we came to 2022, we had another subsequent, a pretty large insurgence of funding into the program in 2022. That was an amount of 212 million awarded to another 168 additional projects. And today we are not quite 11% of those funds spent. Now, key to this set of funding is that half of it was ARPA and COVID stimulus funds. So it was meant to be used quickly. And here we are in 2024, and we really haven't put them to use. Now, to someone on the outside looking at this, you might look at this and it looks really wasteful. And unfortunately, I think it looks that way sometimes to the layman, and it often can look that way even to our legislators. What we want to do is be more efficient about using funds when they become available, getting them programmed and expended in projects when we can. Now, the feedback and the experience we've had throughout CDOT's project managers who oversee and support your local agencies in their project delivery is that there are a lot of delays suffered for sort of unanticipated reasons, meaning, perhaps there were unforeseen things, underestimated costs or unforeseen costs in the project that could have been identified at the time of an application had there been the time and the resources to get that kind of review and feedback on those applications. And then a lot of cost escalations have been seen, and that causes additional delay because then the local agency is having to seek more funding before they can even start. And that just means that the costs just keep going up, and we kind of work backwards, and it's a disadvantage to everybody. So the main point here is that CDOT is seeing this as something that we can avoid by providing a really healthy and thorough review of the applications for new projects before award decisions are made by your TPR or others around the state. And we'll talk more about how we're going to handle some of that. But from that perspective, let's get down to the San Luis Valleys region and talk about the funds that you've awarded to projects. So to date, you've awarded 9 separate projects with a total of just shy of $4.5 million. Of those, we have 2 of them are fully completed. 3 of them are in progress. Spending is in progress. And I think I noted at least one of them that's very close to being fully expended as well. Of those 3, 4 of them are under contract, but have absolutely no activity yet. And 0 of them are still pending getting under contract. So they're all kind of under an IGA, but haven't begun. And so that's the status currently in the San Luis Valley region. Of those 9 projects and the $4.5 million awarded, you're right at about 19% of that being expended. So you're doing a little better than the state is on a sum total, but still have some progress to be made. Questions on those?
If I could, this is Robert Vance. I do have a little concern with what you were saying about doing a more thorough review at the time of application. This program was really kind of enlightening for some of the smaller areas and the smaller municipalities. So please don't do a review to the point where only those entities that have on-staff engineering services and stuff, that they're the only ones that get the priority for these funds. So please remember that a lot of the smaller rural municipalities, this for some of us has really been kind of a godsend. And yes, we do muddle and we take really small baby steps and about 6 steps backwards, but we do get them done. And I really appreciate the program. And I really hope you guys kind of keep it looking in towards some of the smaller rural communities.
Yeah, I really appreciate your comment. And that is exactly, that's the basis of how we are approaching this. We have every intent to support applicants as strongly as we can, meaning CDOT, who has the various subject matter experts, on hand. We want to advise applicants during the application phase so that they are made aware of everything they need to be aware of. And by doing so, we are not weighing in on, I want to be real clear, we are not weighing in on which projects we think are better to be funded. We are simply wanting to advise the applicants of what they need to know so that when it's presented to your TPR for an award, the TPR can make a decision that is fully advised. And that might mean that a project where an applicant, let's say, has it in mind to get a project going and they want to kick it off in a year, but in the application phase, in the feedback you find, well, there's actually quite a bit more. Maybe there's stuff that's going to take us an extra, year or 18 months. What that means is your TPR can award funds in a later year. You're not setting aside, let's say, 2024 funds that you don't get around to using in 2026. And it means we're using these funds more efficiently, not that you're just going to be barred because you have additional hurdles to get through.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that response.
Yeah. And we'll be talking about this a little bit more because had some more details. I just basically touched on a little piece of it. Okay, so updates to the program itself for everybody to be aware of. We talked about the match rates for a moment. The statutes actually permit our Transportation Commission to adopt a formula that would reduce the match rates for certain applicants. And what we have had in place all along is a formula that's automatically reducing the match required of certain towns and counties. That match formula was updated this past May updated in a way only that it uses a more recent year's data. So there's a few shifts to a few towns and counties and the rates that are expected there. But applicants are going to want to revisit that list of towns and counties required match rates. So you're aware of that before you apply. And then there's updated funding projections. So, just a quick background, the ongoing funding to this program comes from either state general funds or it comes from the retail delivery fees collected by the state. And we continue to get updates to the projections on those retail delivery fee revenues. They have been notching upwards since we began this program. So that's a good thing. There's a little bit increased amounts from what we projected a couple of years ago. And then there's also a distribution formula that then allocates those funds to the TPRs. And that distribution formula was also updated in May. No changes to the formula itself, meaning it's the same criteria and criteria weighting, but we updated it with more recent years data. So again, slight shifts in the percentage of the funds that come to the San Luis Valley, and I'll share the numbers with you here in just a minute. But a very key thing that is different in our Transportation Commission's adoption of this updated distribution formula. In the past, the TC's resolution was to distribute a very finite and distinct amount of funding to the TPRs. That formula is now applicable to all the future years of of the program's funds. That means when you get a projection of funding, you get them out into 2025, 26, 27, 28, and so forth. Those are future funds. We don't have those funds yet, but that's the projected amount. The TPR can now make award decisions now for future years' funds. And that's going to be really key. So as we talked about in your question there, you can look at a slate of projected projects or proposed projects and award future years funds so that those projects are now getting ready while you're waiting for the year's funds to become available. And we're going to be much more efficiently using the program's resources that way. Another key thing to note, now this third bullet here saying lower funding amounts compared to previous years, I just said that the projected retail delivery fees have been climbing up, and that is true. But in the past, your awards have been for much greater dollar amounts because they were the large chunk of COVID and COVID recovery funds that came to us back in 2022. And now we're just looking at the retail delivery fees and general funds. So that's just a much smaller pot of funds on an annual basis ongoing. Questions before I keep going?
Keep going.
Okay, good. All right. So let's get on to the things that are really going to be for your discussion now. So these are state funds overseen by CDOT, and as a very strict kind of requirement of any public funds is that they must be awarded in a competitive fashion. Our state controller office makes that pretty clear in terms of what that means. That includes that you have some type of an application process, which you do. But what's different from past MMOF project selections is that a competitive selection also entails some sort of evaluation of each of those applications based on some identified criteria, so that you're doing some quantitative evaluation and you're then able to compare them to one another and you're selecting the better projects. That is different from what has taken place in the past. And I say that because most of the TPRs had had made decisions where they awarded some portion of the funds that were requested. For example, you might have $10 million to award, and you have $15 million of requests. A lot of TPRs just decided to award a portion of the funding to everybody who applied. That is not in line with a competitive selection process. And not only that, but it leaves every one of those projects without enough funding to actually get started. And every local agency then has to go find other avenues to fund the shortfall. So it's not actually in anybody's favor to do that. And so we'll talk some more today about how you get ready for a competitive selection process that that results in a more successful delivery. And then CDOT is going to get involved a little bit more during your application phase, and we will actively review them. We'll have subject matter experts review draft applications, and this is where we'll provide feedback directly to the applicants on any issues we see, any questions, anything that's not clear, any cost estimations or timeline proposals, and we'll help the applicants get a more thorough proposal together so that they're aware. And then it means you're, as a TPR, you're getting applications that are fully filled out and you're well informed of what's proposed. All right, so let's get on to funding. I'm sure you're wondering where we are with this. San Luis Valley here is right smack in the middle of this table. Hopefully you can all read this just fine. You'll see that your annual, or your allocation portion, it's 1.6% of the state's MMOF program funds. And on an annual basis, you have ranging from 100,000 of FY24 funds to 263, and then you'll see how it just slightly climbs every year. I've done a total here showing you just your unallocated FY24 through 28 funds, and I'm showing you these years because as we have a STIP that is programmed through FY28, as a TPR, you can choose to award today, you can choose to award your funds all the way out through FY28. You don't have to. You could award out through 2027 if you choose to, and you can decide as you go, again, as you know, how much of that and how far out into the future you award your funds at any time. Questions?
Questions for Mike? Michael, that 1.2, that's anticipated money, right? That's what we're projecting to see over the next 4 years.
Yeah, good question. The FY24 funds are in the pot now, right? Those were retail delivery fees collected in fiscal year 2024. That was up through June of this year. So that's a definite amount. The FY25 is projected, although we're already well into 25. And so it's going to be pretty close to that dollar amount when we actually see the year close out and we get, we know the actual amount. And then 26 and beyond are projections, but I think they're pretty reliable. The truth is these are the retail delivery fees. And I think we don't know how that'll play out in terms of the volatility, but it might be that it's a little bit more sensitive to economic downturn. Maybe we have a slight economic downturn in a future year and people are just buying less online. That will mean that less revenues are coming to MMOF. And we'll just play that out as we go.
And then what would that do if we decided as a TPR to award that whole amount and it didn't come in?
Yeah.
Just prolong the project?
Well, it means you start borrowing from your subsequent year's funds, right? Okay. So you could be, let's say we're in the middle of 2026 and we're already seeing that things are down a little bit and you've already awarded 27 and there's projects waiting to get started in 27. It may just mean that to utilize that fully, the amount awarded fully, you're going to have to start borrowing from a subsequent year that you haven't awarded yet.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yep. And that's, that's the typical thing. We do that with our FHWA programs too. It's just that the fluctuations are normally pretty small and easily absorbed in those programs. Just, because people don't stop driving cars, even when it's a downtime. So anyway.
Hey, Michael, real quick.
Yeah.
So given that the San Luis Valley gets basically 1.2 million, and I'm very confident there's more demand for 1.2 million than there is money for. I suspect they're going to want to award the entirety of it at this one time. I mean, it's up to the TPR, but if they were to do that, could they start borrowing from fiscal year 29 or something if we get towards the end and we're low on funds? Or is it just within this window? Money
borrowing from 29? No, I think we're kind of at this point we are telling TPRs we're going to limit which years you should award, and that would only be in the active STIP years. So you're not going to award FY29 funds, but maybe what you were referring to is, you're not going to know what projects are getting proposed yet. Let's say you hold a call for projects, and once you get a view of it, you see that you're going to award all 1.2 million, but you have projects that actually want to use, even the 2028 funds, but they want to deliver it in 2027, right? That is something that we can absorb. In other words, we can be programming 28 funds to a project that actually needs to use them in 27. We'll allow some of that advance funding to take place, and only because we know there will be other projects around the state that planned to use funds in 2028, but they probably really won't get around to using them until 2029 or 2030. So we, as a state, we can manage some of that advancing to the projects that are really moving, knowing that others are going to be delayed in their delivery. So
okay. I think the bottom line is, can the TPR award 1.22 now for
yes
this call? Because there will probably be an asks that exceed that amount is my yeah. Okay.
Yep. And Tim, you and your team in the region, everybody's going to have kind of a role to partner with the TPR there to help make informed decisions. You'll be able to kind of weigh in on, okay, well, this project, this is your preferred project. Let's say it wants to spend everything pretty early on, though. You have to kind of just take that into account and make an informed decision that way. Yeah.
We're not going to make that decision today, obviously, because we don't have any
any
projects to look at. So
no, I will say that the other TPRs I've spoken to thus far, I think the smart conclusion they've come to is that they can open up a call for projects, and until they see what's proposed, they are then going to decide how many or how far out in the future years are they going to award. They may choose to hold on to 28, or they may choose to award all of it. They're going to decide once they see what's proposed. And I think that's a good way to go about it.
Yeah, we're a smart TPR too, so we're going to do the same thing.
There you go.
Carry on with your presentation.
Okay, here we go. Let's keep going. So then let's get back to what I referred to in your competitive selection. As I mentioned, a competitive selection means that you're going to evaluate your projects based on some identified criteria. Want to be really clear here that this too is 100% up to the San Luis Valley TPR. You get to decide, how do you want to evaluate projects? What matters to you and your region? What kind of criteria? What are the priorities that you want to invest in with your MMOF funds? What I've put on the screen here are some suggested scoring criteria, because these are the type of criteria that CDOT uses and some of our other multimodal grant programs. These are the types of things we evaluate projects on. So you can, we're showing these to you as a starting point to consider what you want to build into your project evaluation process. And you will do some sort of a quantitative evaluation that you can then use to inform your decisions. So Hugh and I chatted about this a little earlier, just getting ready. Your task at hand today is to have, you know, whatever depth of conversation you have the time for today, to talk about criteria. Which ones would you want to use? Are there others you would add, and so forth? And Hugh, and I'm going to kind of bounce back to you with your guidance here as to how you want to handle this discussion today.
Yeah, 1 second, Deacon. Hugh, is there anything you want to add to that, or do you just want me to carry on with kind of what you told me earlier?
Carry on with what we talked about earlier.
Okay, go ahead, Deacon.
I do think ability to deliver on time might be a worthwhile consideration, considering how much construction costs are increasing. I think if you can have a project that's delivered in 2025 or 2026, that purchasing power of $2028 is only going to go down, and it's not going to keep up with the increased revenue. So I do think, even though it's a little counterintuitive to be spending money that you don't have in pocket, it's going to buy a lot more the faster you can spend it. That's my only point.
See, I told you we were smart, TPR.
Yeah.
Get that recommendation, Hugh? Okay, so Hugh informed me that previously when we've gone through the MMOF funding, we've created a committee to do that. So I think if you guys agree with that, that would be something that we could do. So we could bring a recommendation to the whole TPR and then move forward from there. So Hugh, you said that previously we had one representative from each county. So we had seven, one from Chaffee. It's hard. So I would take a recommendation for each county, and we could just throw out the names right now and get a committee approved, and then that committee will be responsible moving forward for recommendations to the entire TPR. How about, I guess I'm Alamosa, that's A, we'll start with Alamosa. You're a representative also from Alamosa, Deacon. Do you have a recommendation?
I assume we will be applying, so I think it would be a conflict if I were also on that committee.
And I'm happy to do that if that's all right with you. We could take. Okay, you can put my name down for Alamosa, Hugh. How about Chaffee? Do you guys have a recommendation? Okay.
Baker's term limited in November, or actually January, so maybe get myself down for now.
I don't think we're limited on, does it have to be a commissioner, Hugh, or? Oh. Okay.
If that's the case. At least for right now, while we're in transition, let's do Don Reimer, County Administrator.
Okay, did you get that, Hugh? Don Reimer? What was that, Julie? The commissioners have to approve the representative to the MMOF committee? Okay. All right, Caneos. Do we have anybody left from Caneos here?
Lift up. He's right out here.
Okay. Joseph.
Yes.
You're the representative for Caneos County to the TPR. So should we just go ahead and, do you have a recommendation for your person on the MMOF decision committee, or would that just be you?
Yeah, it's me.
Yeah, let's put Joseph. That makes sense. Who's next? Costia? Who's Costia's rep? Is there anybody else from Costilla here?
We're gonna meet with them later this afternoon, so we can ask them.
Okay, we'll put Barbara's name down as a placeholder, and if they want to change it, they'll
Yep.
let us know. And Rio Grande's rep would be Gene.
I'll just do it, and then if we have a conflict with it all,
Okay,
please.
who's left? Swatch. Is that you, Liza?
If we have somebody else that would like to, we could put that name in shortly.
Okay.
Okay, and then I just want to make a point just about the conflict thing is that this is a San Luis Valley application process. So I feel like there's going to be applications from all counties. So I feel like the conflict, I don't know what that's going to look like, but all counties will probably have a project. Yeah, I don't think that's really an issue.
Yeah, I think that's correct. Just because you're on this committee doesn't mean you could.
Yeah, that doesn't limit you
It
from
would,
applying
it would
for-
probably mean the committee, as one of its rules, would be that the applicant couldn't score their own application. That would be the way that's how we've done it with other competitive grants.
You would basically abstain from your own.
You would
project.
abstain from your own application.
All right, you got Liza on there. Who am I missing? Mineral.
They just left.
Jesse? We'll just put his name down for now. Is that everybody? How many you got, Hugh? Okay,
Yeah. And then Hugh, and Vern, I'm happy to join it just from a procedural standpoint, right? These will be your guys' decisions, but happy to just listen in and make sure everything's going according to the way Michael's presenting it.
appreciate that.
I want to emphasize that role of CDOT staff in evaluating those basic aspects of the applications is pretty critical. So that's been very helpful in the past, and it's still the TPR's final decision.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Liza.
Are we limited then to the 6 reps from the county? Because I think San Luis Valley Great Outdoors would be a great addition to a multimodal.
Well,
Application.
the committee, it doesn't necessarily make the final decision. I don't think they bring a recommendation to the TPR. Is that correct?
Yep.
So, I mean, it's not like they wouldn't have a voice, and the bigger we make that committee, then not the worse it gets, but the more cumbersome it gets.
Okay.
I think we try ready to those who are actual members, voting members, and this will be go as well.
All right, I would accept a motion to approve the committee to, what do we call this committee, Hugh? MMOF committee.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. All those in favor of the MMOF committee that was presented, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, that passes. All right, we got that taken care of. Michael, what do you need from us
Great.
next?
Yeah, okay. Well, let's just go on. I'm going to talk a little bit more, excuse me, about CDOT's involvement in reviewing applications, so you understand what that's going to look like. Talked about these topics already, but CDOT's various subject matter experts will do a thorough review of every application, and it's going to be in a draft form. So what that means is we're asking the TPR to schedule your call and selection in a way that affords CDOT some time during a draft submission phase to do a thorough review that we can then get that back to applicants before they finalize. And what we'll be looking for are the topics we talked about, ensuring eligibility for the program goals and the program project types, cost estimates, any implications of what they're proposing on the budget, but also taking a look at what they're proposing for their other funding sources. And what I mean by that is, are they proposing to combine some other awards, and are those awards that have already been awarded, or are they going to be seeking other awards and that sort of thing? And then just general project delivery. How ready are they? Have they considered all of the things that it'll take to get ready, and are the timelines adequate? Any other problems we see in the scope, the feasibility, is it clear, that sort of thing. And real clear, we won't be weighing in on the merits of the project. That's not the intent. So whatever criteria you identify to evaluate them, we won't be weighing in on those, not unless you specifically ask us to, weigh in and be on this committee with you. So the goals, of course, are to give the applicants everything they need to make a well-defined and a competitive proposal. And we ultimately just want to reduce the number of projects that suffer delays and cost escalations because they're taking too long. And then, really this might sound like CDOT is taking a whole lot of time and effort now to get involved in your application process, but we actually believe that it is going to reduce cost for us because we oversee and have to support those local agencies through their delivery. We think it's going to actually save us a lot of effort downstream for both CDOT and for the local agencies themselves when they're better informed at the get-go. And then ultimately, it's going to make it possible for you to select the very best investments for your region. So there's other support coming. We'll be sharing with you updated program guides that have been available. They'll be updated to our new guidance and so forth. We'll share that with you. We're also going to be scheduling applicant webinars in the very near future that can be attended by both TPRs and your committee members, but also the applicants themselves. And we'll go over the MMWF program itself, but more importantly, we'll talk about what does it mean to have a grant-funded project and what are CDOT's requirements and the process they can expect so that they're prepared for that. And then we'll also provide application and scoring forms, as I shared on the earlier slide, that list of criteria. Whatever criteria you select, we do have some criteria sort of evaluation forms that you can use and modify to your preferences so that you have an efficient evaluation and selection process with that. The application has been updated from the past ones you've used so that it has questions that give you the kind of information you need to make the evaluation of the projects. So that all that will be coming out in the very, very near future, and we'll share that with you widely. And then there's some best practices we've even talked about today, like how do you, what's the best way to go about making project selections? And Tim has said he'll, be alongside you through your selection process, so we'll help you as you go. But we do have some best practices, and a lot of those are written into the program guide. Lastly, one challenge we've had in the past is just collecting information, exchanging it, and communicating with CDOT so that we're aware of what kind of decisions the TPR has made and so forth. So to aid in that and in the application review, we've set up an email address specifically where your applicants can submit draft and final applications and any related materials so that we are more efficient about that. And that address is here. It's a very simple address, mmOF@state.co.us. And we'll use that as a more efficient means to handle all those documents. But also it's a place that anybody can submit questions about the program or projects they're proposing. And I think that's kind of it. We've already talked about some of the next steps for you in terms of, what years you're going to plan, what years of funding you want to do. But another topic to think about is what kind of a call for projects will you hold? And in some cases, there are still some of your existing MMWF projects that are still not yet fully funded. And in that case, some TPRs are considering, having a subsequent call for supplemental funding. So existing projects can seek additional funding so that they complete that budget portfolio and can get going. So you can have a call for only those type of projects, or you can have a call for completely new projects altogether, or a combination of both. And so I would expect your committee to just kind of have that conversation. And then you've already done the scoring committee members. Congratulations on that. But you'll want to talk through, what is your process going to look like? Talk through those criteria. How are you going to weight those different criteria and so forth? And we'll support you through that so that it's not a administrative nightmare to do that. We'll help you out there. And then just decide on what's the ideal schedule that you'll lay out for a call and review and selection. And that's kind of the tasks for your committee. And I guess I should put it back to you all, what's the timeline that you anticipate? Are you looking to have this MMOF committee make that recommendation by the time you meet again? Or I heard you talk about the next meeting, but I'm not sure I noted it. So
Michael, I would recommend to the TPR that, so the TPR has a lot of work with the statewide plan and the MMOF.
Yep.
It's a lot of opportunity. It's also a lot of work. I think there is a great opportunity for overlap, however, with that transit and active transportation statewide meeting that you guys have now decided we're going to have. Really, the goal of that meeting will be to get a prioritized list of transit and active transportation projects. Well, and the goal of the MOF process is to define the highest priorities of active transportation and transit projects in the region. So I would think you could kind of marry the two processes to get an overall list. And then, possibly using the MMOF scoring criteria, it could be some work for the TPR to decide, okay, this project's a better fit for the statewide plan. This project's a better fit for MMOF. But I would suggest holding off on doing the call, doing the scoring criteria until at least we can integrate it with that statewide active transportation and transit meeting. I think it's an opportunity to kind of kill two birds with one stone.
Oh, it's all right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's up to the TPR, right? I mean, it could be January, it could be January of next year, right? These funds, there's 1.2 million between now and the end of fiscal year 2028. So there's not a huge, in my view, I mean, I'm sure there's urgent need to get these projects done as quick as possible, but at the same time, the statewide plan will also identify projects and potentially get funding for some of these projects as well. So I think looking at the two processes together, I think will be to the benefit of the TPR.
That sounds reasonable to me. Rest of you think that sounds all right? Hugh, you got that on your notes? We'll try to mingle those two meetings together, it sounds like, and start the committee's process.
Yeah, and maybe the committee we could start some discussions offline just amongst our committee members to try to prep for that meeting. And then it may even require, because my understanding is the point of that transit and active transportation meeting won't necessarily be to prioritize projects. It will be to kind of present the same sort of data that was presented today, but specific to those types of things, right? Specific to active transportation, specific to transit, get the members thinking about it, hearing that kind of data. And it may affect the types of applications they would want to put forward for both MMOF and the long range plan.
Yeah, and it sounds like we've got a few things, just homework to do as far as scoring and when we want to look at them, what we're going to look at and all that kind of stuff. So like you said, there's no deadline.
Right.
This stuff rolls over. So I think that sounds good. Let's mingle those two meetings together. Okay.
Good plans. Okay. Well, that's it. I'm just share the MMOF webpage link. Hugh, I think you've shared this deck with everybody, so you have that link and my address. You saw the new MMOF email address as well. You can send questions there if you need, or just directly to me. Yeah, happy to take any last questions or thoughts. Otherwise,
anything
we're
else
good.
for Michael? Okay, let's move on.
Fantastic. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Michael.
Yep.
All right, we have other business on the agenda. Do we have any other business today? Not.
I'm here. So my name, I guess I've been talking a lot without really explicitly stating why I'm here. So we started a farm here, and our farm goal was to use sustainability and all those good stuff. However, we came into a stop due to transportation issues with Denver. Hence, we started focusing on having to be able to get to our farm and ability to leave. And then also, we also know that a lot of friends also want to visit or come, and the best way to help them go, you know, some of them used to go to Vail, like you said, for during winter time. However, the traffic and, you know, waiting, the quality goes down. So we're here to open a transportation, a transit that goes from Denver Airport, and it stops at the Wolf, the other ski area, Wolf Creek. And for right now, our plan and our target, if everything works well, is to start the transit November 1st. So, but first, I'm still working on picking up, because I'm picking up a car, buses that we got from National Park and Services from Great Canyon. So I still have to figure out getting them here, and I'm working on it. And then our gases are powered by they're all natural gas powered buses that seat about 42 people. However, you know, our constraint that we're also trying to work on is that to service the truck, the bus, we have to go to Colorado or take it to Phoenix, which is not visible for us where we are right now. So yeah, that's where we are. I was invited. I'm grateful for the invite. Thank you so much for having me here. And it's really, we love it here. Like, we love St. Louis Valley. And we hope that we can all partner up and things can work out for everyone for the best. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else have business? Go ahead, Rob.
Chairman, just one thing I'd like to just make a compliment to CDOT, Julie, and your team at Region 5. As we start the new STIP process, I just want you guys to know that I think all of us understand challenges, but we also appreciate at least how you were able to disperse the money and the funding to the entire TPR. I think it was a fantastic process. So thank you.
Appreciate your live faces here today too. Thank you for that. All right, anything else? I have a scheduled for our county meeting at 1 o'clock. Do you guys have that also? Okay.
Will we be in this, we'll be in the same room, Vern?
I believe we're going to stay here. Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Anybody against adjourning? This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
How are you doing?
Yeah, we had ours.
Oh.
However, I think it's not as you guys. And then have it
Yes.
Good luck.
Only scheduled till 12.
I know.
Yeah.
And Monty talked about it.
That's what we bring in the name of the meeting. So we got Travis.
That's what I would assume. Yeah, I was going outside.
Yeah, I know. Back in May, some of those